incarcerated are adjudicated. At least they've been picked up on the streets at one time or another. I have a 24-year-old. I understand how that goes. If he weren't in high school, he would have been picked up by the police, whether we were in DC or whether we were in Washington, because that's what happens. No matter what you're doing, not selling drugs, not doing any of that stuff, hanging on the corner, you're going to get picked up. So I think we need to do that whole youth piece, make sure that literacy is a part of that, and then I want to talk for a second about adults. We have got to blow up the way we do business in job training and adult literacy. It has to be joined. We have to have contextualized adult literacy so that if you aspire to be an LPN, you're not learning to read to order food at a restaurant. You know, I wish that someday you would have enough money to go and order food at a restaurant. But the bottom line is I don't know how many of you are native English speakers in here who are now fluent in another language. I went to really good high schools. I studied French and Spanish from the time I was 14. I can tell you the names of fruits and colors and numbers. I could not be employed in France or Spain. And yet that stupid model that made almost none of us bilingual, okay, or trilingual, is the model that we're adopting for adult literacy. So when are we going to wake up? As an employer, there's lots of employers in this room. If somebody can come in and read for you orange, purple, and green, are you going to hire them, or do you want them to be able to read the manual that they have to read when you change your fill in the blank? Software, equipment, time schedule, whatever it is. So I think contextualized adult literacy is the only thing that we're going to put forward in partnership with OVE, the Office of Vocational and Adult Literacy. And finally, my agency puts out at least $4.5 billion with a B dollars a year in training money to the system, the workforce investment system, and in competitive grants, not counting what I put out in UI, unemployment insurance. So the history, do the math. That agency has been putting that money out for, tell me, Paul, since you rode the dinosaur, right? You know, never before this year did the money that we put out say people who get training through this agency should get an industry-recognized credential or a degree. Never. So we threw money out in bucket loads and said, do with it what you will. And this really is final, and then I'll let you go to the next sentence. We have to invest more in learn while you earn models that put people to work while they're learning what they need to keep that job. Whether you call that model apprenticeship, whether you call that model internship, whether you call it, what did they call it at Northeastern and Drexel? Cooperative education. See, that's why you had to be here. I don't care what you call it, but somebody has to know that the dignity of work equals dollars, and the more skilled you are while you're doing that dignified work, the more money you will make. So it seems to me that we have all the answers. I don't know why we're playing around not doing it. But we're going to start. We have started.
Well, we're glad to know there's money. Actually, I just want to give a shout out. If you're an impact partner in this room, please raise your hand. We have impact partners. Impact, come on, I see other, yes. We have figured it out in Philadelphia. We are doing a ton of contextualized literacy. Of course, we're starving for the resources to be able to continue that work. Just one final question. We're going to try to move it along, and this is about a population I think we don't talk about enough. And so the question is, how can we act to ensure the emerging workforce strategies, all of this work that we're doing, can also benefit individuals with disabilities, where the unemployment rate is 65%. I think that's conservative, frankly. I think it's probably higher. So if you could address that as your final.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, Paul and I would agree that there's two numbers we need to look at, and that's the unemployment number and the employment number. And people disagree with the people with, on the population of people with disabilities on the unemployment number, but there's really pretty good agreement that it's probably 20% or less who are engaged, who are employed. And we cannot succeed as a country unless we're using everybody's gifts and talents. Let me tell you that this is one where we have to lead by example in the federal government. we have a hiring incentive for people with disabilities. I have on my staff people with full spectrum disabilities, targeted disabilities is what we call them. So it's something that we actively go out and recruit. I think businesses have to do that as well, not because you're giving somebody a handout, not because you're doing community service or being a good person, because it's a good decision, it's a good business decision. These employees, just like many other employees who never thought they were going to get a chance to work for you, these employees tend to be the absolutely most loyal employees you're ever going to find. And many of them don't need health insurance, because part of the Ticket to Work program is making sure they get to keep their federal health insurance because of the extraordinary costs associated with their disabilities in many cases. So I'm talking now with targeted disabilities, people who you can see are disabled. I think the next question is, what about the people who you can't see their disability? People who have extraordinary learning disabilities, or people who have mental health challenges. These are the real people that are going to be difficult, because these are the folks who look like they're not educated, when in fact they come to the table with different gifts and talents than proving their education through a standardized test or a work keys instrument. So I think those are the people that are going to be much more difficult for us to target. They try to remain invisible, just like people with low literacy skills. They don't want to come out and tell you that they were IEP'd when they were in high school. So we're going to have to make outreach to them to make sure that we have accommodations on the workplace so that everybody who doesn't have to do certain things knows that it's okay to partner with someone. I would feel that it was fine if I had to lift that table to ask somebody for help. I wouldn't necessarily feel as fine if I needed somebody to help me read a technical document. We have to make sure that supervisors, if reading a technical document is not a part of your day-to-day work and your work plan, it should be okay to get somebody to help you. Just like I wasn't hired because I could lift up a table, and yet that's fine. It's not so fine if I need, not saying it's part of your job. Certainly I do not want somebody putting a needle in my arm that can't read the doctor's instruction. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about, in some instances, we take literacy to a higher level than is job necessary. And we should make sure that we're looking at the skills that are necessary for that job. And if it's not a necessary skill for that job, but just an occasional thing, we should allow for accommodation. So nobody would ask me to do a trigonomic equation right now, but I might ask you. But really think about that as you're working with employers to get what are the skills necessary so that you can get everybody up to speed and moving on a continuous learning pathway, but not putting a blocker because someone with a learning disability is never going to read above the 8th grade level. So I think it's important to recognize that. It's no different than losing a limb. It's no different. It's something that you can't make accommodations for, and we have made it very embarrassing to talk about that as a country. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your questions. I'm glad to say this.